GM, we are back. It is the week of Thanksgiving. It is the week of Black Friday. It's the week of our Community Choice Awards. The World Cup is going on, and we have some fun stuff going on. We've got some things next week that we're excited about, like Art Basel and our town hall. There's a lot of activity here, and the energy is palpable for us on the CPG team. We're excited to be here with you today because we've got an amazing guest. So I'm just going to recap a couple of quick things as a quick reminder to the folks that are paying attention now. Like I said, this Friday, CPG, we've got a drop coming, and we are working hard behind the scenes. It's really exciting for us to be able to do this with you, and we're excited for what we're about to share. Also, our Builders Club and the Community Choice Awards are live. We announced our 10 finalists this morning. Please do your part to participate and vote to make sure that we are handing out that community award to our favorite builders. We also have some fun World Cup stuff going on. We are a pretty global organization, and Buzz, one of our moderators, has pulled together a really fun event for us. So if you're a big World Cup footy fan, you should be participating in that as well. Next week, we're going to announce a bunch of things at our town hall. So please mark your calendars on that. We've got a calendar invite coming shortly. And as always, Art Basel. On the 1st of December, we are having our Sunset Soiree. We are working hard to make sure that everything is in line and perfect there. I wanted to give a quick shout out to our partners, of which we're very thankful that they are participating with us. We have Silicon Valley Bank, Vouch, Third Web, Shopify, and Bitsky. All of them have been great partners and sponsors for us, and we're really excited for everyone to join us. If you haven't redeemed your token-proof email ticket or e-ticket, please hit us up in the chats. We'll get routed to it. There is a bunch of fun things for us to do there. We do expect that we're going to need the token-proof app and your ticket to be in there to get in, and we're really excited to share that with a number of partner communities. So let's keep it going. But for our Genius Call, which is the main objective here, we're excited to have our special guest. Our special guest is Roger Beaman, the CEO and co-founder of Novel. Novel is an amazing integration of our two favorite things, Web3 and e-commerce. We've been working with Novel behind the scenes for our drop, and it's my pleasure to bring him here today to introduce Roger. Roger, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing?
Hey man, doing great. Excited to be on. It's been a real joy working with you and the CPG team for the drop, but also just being a part of Club CPG, and it was one of the first NFT communities that I myself joined, and it's just been a lot of fun. I've met a lot of people this way.
100%. We met in real life for the first time at NFT NYC. We stood outside in the rain and talked for a while after the pop event, and it was really amazing to get to know you even then. And we spent some time working together the past couple of months, and then specifically for this prep call. So I find your personal background amazing and fascinating. I believe you should share it with our audience, because it really sets the foundation for what an exceptional entrepreneur you are, and also will set the tone of the relevance of, like, when we were talking, and we are both entrepreneurs, we have that entrepreneurial spirit, and it's very difficult at times, and it's very lonely at times. So where did your journey start, and how did that come to be?
Yeah. Well, I think that, one thing that I guess I've experienced a lot is just, which I think is relevant in today's times for sure, is, sort of resilience training, you might say. Which I know you've experienced a lot too, Mikey. But yeah, I think that, and I think though really that being very resilient is kind of a key element of being able to be successful as an entrepreneur, because you kind of just you take like punch after punch, right? Like a lot of times, right? Like you start something on your laptop, you're trying to build legitimacy from scratch, and and how do you make this thing like into something that other people care about, as much as you do. And so resilience is kind of a key thing to have there. You kind of just need to be relentless and unstoppable, on kind of all fronts, it's like a multi-front war, and you're kind of just pushing on on everywhere you can get, right? But yeah, so anyways, that was a little ramble there. But yeah, I guess, my own story, yeah, and I think the parts that Mikey's alluding to, we caught up before this. So, grew up in great loving household in Northern Virginia, and outside of DC. At some point I kind of went astray there though, and went on this path, and basically got very addicted to drugs and alcohol, and ended up in basically like a kind of rehab slash jail for a year, a rehab that you're not allowed to leave, and it's not fancy. There's no celebrities there, and I ended up there for a year when I was 16, and that was like the kind of transformative moment for me, that kind of got me to turn my life around completely, and I think that and then I've been in AA since then. I have like 14 years sober. The I think that a thing that really kind of taught, there was both the resilience, but also kind of this, like most of the people that I was in there with are like dead or in prison now, and so there was sort of this like need to sort of find my own way and sort of go against the grain, right? Like going with the grain was not going a good way. And so I really had to, kind of find conviction in my own path to go. And and I did, and then similarly, like I had to do that again. I went to community college there. Like a lot of people were not very serious students, and were a lot of some crossover with the rehab and the community college, and I kind of really had to keep my head on straight, and I took 3 years worth of community college classes in 1 year. Ended up a year ahead of my high school classmates, and then graduated top of my class at William and Mary, and all these things in economics. So really, the resilience, but also, yeah, that kind of like, it's like if I've stayed on the default path, that wouldn't have worked, right? And so I kind of just had to like figure out like sort of my own truth and follow that. So that was like early life. Then got into, I studied finance and economics. Then I got a very weird finance job where I was, my literal job was to value legal infractions. So like if you're a company and I'm a company and we're suing each other, like how much do we get to sue each other for? I got to figure that out. But kind of as that wasn't what I wanted my life's work to be exactly. So I got really into, while I was at that job, engineering, and that was sort of like this light bulb for me. Like it was just kind of, I fell in love, like someone showed me how to write code in Microsoft Excel, which if you have anyone that's been a financial analyst, you like live in Excel. And someone showed me how to write this code VBA, and I just like took off with it. Like I was like, this is all I want to do. And I was going to tech meetups. I didn't know anyone that was in tech, and I was just like, asking people questions. And so then eventually I kind of like just brute forced my way into a tech job. And then, kind of went from there, ended up working, which was kind of crazy given all that I told you before, ended up working at like Goldman Sachs and like all these, fancy places. And, got pretty good at engineering. I got like 3 patents in, different engineering things. Basically there was this guy that had kind of basically he was one of the founders of one of the companies that I'd worked at. He was a tech billionaire, and he had kind of plucked me from the herd and been like, you should start companies. And like he'd kind of been relentlessly trying to get me to do that for years. Eventually I said yes, and then but I guess diving into that just a little bit, like I hadn't, for me, like I didn't, I guess I really liked engineering, like, and I didn't value money that much, I guess. And so like I kind of didn't really get like why start a company, and which is why it took him years to convince me to do it. What I saw, I worked at a startup like directly before starting my first company, and what I saw there was like this place that was very different from anywhere else in my career, where what we were doing was actually like commercial real estate, big data analytics stuff, and yeah, I mean, the end result was like making real estate investors richer. But like, so nothing that, we weren't saving puppies, right? But like it was, we were building something together, and that just kind of like created this incredible energy. And it was like, I still have reunions with the people that I worked at that job with, right? And this was just like, man, like this is what a startup can be, and it's because it's like this positive sum game. It's like this team win that can happen, when something's growing. So I wanted to make that for myself. I was like, I want to make a place where people have that, right? So then, I went off on this journey of being a founder, and I want to pause for like a second. Just, I talked a lot, like,
Yeah, there's so much to react to there.
Yeah.
I think I have a unique perspective in this particular Genius call, in that we've been working alongside each other for a while, and watching you operate, but also watching how your team operates. They've been doing a phenomenal job with us, being very responsive, and that all starts from the founder. For Club CPG, with the builders that we have and the people who are passionate, I think one of our most important traits and one of our most foundational aspects is we have a lot of people with that same grit and burning desire, who want to get better, who want to improve. Like at each stage, you were like, all right, I'm going to kick ass in college, and then I'm going to kick ass in work, and then I'm going to kick ass in engineering, and then I'm going to kick ass in founding. That is not to say that any of those things go smoothly, but it is persistence that then moves it forward. And for our builders, it's the same kind of like reach out, find some folks, get some feedback, iterate, get better, on to the next. That is a special place, I feel, in Web3 and on the internet and for our community. And for us, it's the same thing. It starts with our founders, with Chris and Jamie, who have walked the walk, have a long history of really putting in the work, which is a key component of this. And I applaud you for, man, nothing goes, I mean, up and to the right is a fake story. When you zoom in, there's lots of ups and downs. It's just depending on how you smooth out the curve over time. So we've been talking about, and we haven't referenced it fully, but you founded Novel. So let's talk about like where that inspiration came from and where that started.
Yeah, sure. So I started a company before Novel, and that was actually my first dip into like e-commerce. I won't talk about that, I guess, too much, but like is a subscription billing company called Smartrr. Like I'll just say that, that I did very well in terms of like the team, and I did very well in terms of company trajectory. But unfortunately, we got to a $75 million valuation in 9 months, which sure, it was 2021, but we were objectively doing better than I think any other startup that I knew of at that time. And I think we were the fastest growing fintech. And basically, there were a few mistakes that I made there. One, when, setting up the company, I was a first time founder. I didn't really know what I was doing. But I think the other is you just really need to be careful, like kind of to the point that Mikey made there. Like you just really have to bring in people that kind of share that team win mindset. Because frankly, I mean, like, in a startup, people talk about like, like in other people's work life, they talk about keeping work life and personal life separate. In a startup, you can't do that. You kind of it's like all in all the time, and like you all need to like be able to trust each other. So if you bring in someone that kind of breaks that, then you can really have it all kind of fall apart. And long story short is the night that this $75 million valuation Series A that was led by like one of the best venture capitalists in the world, like possibly of all time, was about to close. Like basically that round was killed, and I woke up without the company that I had started the next day. And and then basically all the friends that I had brought in were kind of screwed out of that too. So it was really like a founder's worst nightmare in a way. So there are many great things about a startup, but you do really need there are a few things that you need to be very, very careful about, which DM me. But yeah, and so anyways, really like what led to Novel was like, all right, like I kind of had all of these investors that were like pumped to back me for something. They thought that they were going to back me for this one company that I was doing, and all of a sudden I was a free agent. And so then it was like, all right, like what would be like a great idea to pursue right now? And what I had seen was, okay, like this Apple privacy change, like obviously well intended, but it had made basically cost of customer acquisitions skyrocket. And so I was like, all right, is there a way to kind of address that and make these businesses sustainable again? And I saw Web3 as like really there's two problems in ecom. There's like customer acquisition and retention. I mean, there's a whole lot of other problems too that are like maybe like physically shipping stuff and all that stuff, right? But like with the website, like you're kind of trying to drive those two things, acquisition and retention. And so I saw this way that like, all right, Web3 could potentially address both of those, because there's like this ability to build this community and like increase retention. And there's also this ability to, partner with the community and perhaps acquire new customers, as we are going to see, with Club CPG this Friday, right? So that was what I thought was really interesting about this intersection of Web3 and ecom. And so, and had a bunch of investors and stuff that were at the ready, had team members that had been, with the other startup or like that I'd been planning on recruiting for it, who were ready to go. And and so then like off we went to the races with Novel. And it's been a heck of a ride. We raised $6 million. Well, no, actually 7 total from Gary Vee and Lear Hippo. They led the round. Brian Sugar has been like heavily involved, as well as Costa Noah, and John Calgill from there. But yeah, and so we've kind of just been running real hard. Brought in my co-founder Anna Mersey. She's been great too, and led like the go-to-market side. But yeah, we've seen, we've brought on Liquid Death, as I'm sure you guys see if you like check out the website and stuff. Liquid Death, Taika, like a lot of people I would say that are doing interesting things, like that are kind of pushing the edge at this intersection of Web3 and ecom. And that's been a really exciting position to be in.
First, I want to say thank you for sharing and being like, it's a vulnerable story, and one that you've clearly come through the other side of and done with a lot of grace. So thank you for sharing. I also feel like there's so much to unpack with how you came to this particular idea, and sort of probably resonates a bit in like, how did you get involved with Web3? Yeah, because I think though that piece of it, in talking with you a number of times, you have this really interesting Web3 kind of versioning that got you to where Novel is now, and how you see that progression. And I think it's worthwhile to like share with people how you're thinking about Web3, because it's a very interesting mental model that I think people can learn a lot from. So
Yeah.
what is Web3 for you, and like where did you start on it?
Totally. Yeah. I think well, so the interesting thing about Web3 generally is that like it's a piece of technology, right? And I started with that because I was an engineer, I was a nerd, and so like any self-respecting nerd these days, I would say, has at least dabbled in blockchain. Uh, but actually, a kind of funny story. One of the first companies I worked for as an engineer, I did this hackathon, which I won, which was we we were like, oh, no one can do exclusive image rights, like that's like a total mess here at Shutterstock, right? Like for someone to just buy exclusive rights to an image. And it was like, okay, what if you were able to put that image, if someone bought it exclusively on the blockchain, and then, oh yeah, there's this interesting idea, this thing CryptoPunks just came out, and like one thing they do is like when people buy and sell it back and forth, like the people that made CryptoPunks get like a fee, right? And so like legit, on my computer from this hackathon years ago, I basically have like a shitty version of OpenSea, which little did I know that was like a multi-billion-dollar idea, right? But missed out, or I guess Shutterstock did. But yeah, so I guess I knew like how to do it and like what it was and what it wasn't just from that, right? But yeah, I think the like what you're kind of getting at that we've talked about before is so like what are NFTs like now, and like where do we at Novel like think they're going, right? And so yeah, what we talked about is like, all right, like Web 3.0.0, like we think was like digital art, and it's kind of funny because like people act like lampoon, like like that was kind of a thing that naysayers for NFTs would say is like $1 million JPEGs, but it's like digital art is like a multi-billion-dollar market, right? That like like it's a real market, and like people were selling multi-million-dollar JPEGs before NFTs, right? And I would just argue that NFTs made it better. Like they made it so that there's a secondary market, and like the artist can participate in that. It's just objectively better than the traditional digital art market. I would say it's just an improvement. So I would say though that was like step one, like 3.0.0 was just digital art, right? And then 3.0.1, I think, was this community aspect and kind of building these like digital social clubs, and Club CPG Pop are obviously an example of that, right? And I think that's actually super fascinating, like just because like what like a sort of unsolved problem on the internet, I think, is meeting new people. Like there's just not that many like ways like outside of online dating, right? Like there's not really like online friending. And I think that it's a really interesting way to do that is to have this community that's built around this kind of shared passion. Like in Club CPG, it's kind of like ecom and tech, right? And and I've met like a bunch of people that way, like through this, right? And that's just really cool. And there's like developer DAOs, like kind of passionate engineers, and so I think that was sort of like 3.0.1 was like this idea of these online like digital social clubs, right? And then I think that there's going to be this like next iteration that I think like 3.0.2, if you will, that we're really excited about, and we're starting to see emerge. We sort of get this like with Novel, we sort of get this like God view into like all the interesting things that people are doing in Web3 because they're using our tech to do it. And so something that we think is really interesting is just like these situations that Web3 just kind of makes better. And yeah, and examples of that are there's like these markets, like the wine market or the whiskey market, where people basically initiate, creating the product years before it's actually delivered to the customer. And it just kind of like, you can imagine like forecasting your inventory 3 months out is difficult. Like forecasting it 5 years out is kind of impossible, and almost you don't even try. And therefore, like less of those products get made, like less wine and whiskey gets made, because there's a risk of just like, who knows what the economy looks like 5 years from now. And so where NFTs come into that is you can sell an NFT that is a digital representation of this product before it's made, that can then be redeemed later for that, for that product. And it just kind of makes sense to do it that way. Like it's operationally better. And on the, so on the merchant side, it makes it a predictable business. On the customer side, it makes it an investment. If you if you join AA with me, in the meantime, then maybe you don't want the bottle of wine or whiskey anymore, and you can sell it, right? But also, it's an investment, right? That asset class has performed well over time. So that's, I think, the wine and whiskey use case we're really excited about. A similar one is sort of shoe drops and fashion drops, where there's this crazy situation right now where if you buy these like these shoes, right, like in the latest shoe drop, right, or like a Supreme drop, right, like people then ship around like on eBay like these goods, right, like back and forth, and like these are investors, right, like they don't actually want the shoe, they just want to invest in the shoe, and then it ultimately ends up at the person that wants to wear the shoe, right? And it just kind of is objectively better if you could have an NFT representation of that shoe, or or that T-shirt, and have that get traded back and forth and then ultimately redeemed, right? So we think that there's a lot of really interesting use cases at this intersection of e-com and Web3, and and it's a lot of the reason that we like built Novel in the first place, was like we saw this kind of future where that would happen.
Amazing. The wonderful thing about what you've said is we've had guests on that intersect in a variety of ways with this. We had G Money on a couple of weeks ago. We had Bobby Hundreds on. All of them, again, at that bleeding edge. G Money specifically talked about vaulting his shoes,
Yes.
and how that becomes a very valuable asset class for, not only he's like, it's buying an option on an option, which is a really fun novel way to think about it. No pun intended. What I find fascinating about this conversation is like, you're deep in the tech.
Yeah.
Like the things that Novel offers, of which I'm thankful and fortunate we have firsthand knowledge of doing.
Yeah.
No alpha here for the folks that are watching right now, but there's alpha coming. What is the most impressive piece of the technology that maybe folks just don't necessarily get? I'm going to preface this by saying I bought a bottle of Mondavi wine a year ago.
Yep.
It has been produced. It has a generative art alongside it. I get to redeem it. It's a special bottle. There's also this progeny that it came from Mondavi.
Yeah.
And like that aspect of it, and because counterfeiting is also a big issue, where I think blockchain again just makes the experience better. It's like, not that people won't try and mess this system up. There's always people who are trying to counterfeit things.
Yeah.
However, I mean, we just see OpenSea and fake accounts, and you just need look no further.
Yeah.
What is the most important piece of the tech for you right now in the e-commerce vein that you would expect that the bleeding edge people are doing now, but this is going to be a common thing for everyone to do going forward, and that Novel provides now?
Yeah. And I think the Mondavi, they selling wine before it's made, they did that, right? And like that's, like a clear example of what we were talking about. I should have brought them up, but yeah, glad you did. Yeah, so I think that the thing for us at Novel, basically, we like there are just these concepts are kind of simple, and I guess there's some some famous person that I heard say basically a lot of businesses that are good are simple on the top and complex underneath. And yeah, I think that, this idea of, selling the wine before it's made as an NFT and then redeeming it later, like that's pretty simple. I can explain it to you in 2 sentences, but to pull that off is actually extremely complicated. And so, because ecom tech is actually quite complicated, and then blockchain tech is sort of too, I would say. And so, so I think that the main feat that we've pulled off is just being able to do all of that in minutes without code. And and obviously there's customization that you can do as a developer to really specialize it, right? But it's not required, right? Like you can actually, if you want to, do exactly what I just said. If you were a winemaker and you wanted to set that up on your site, you could do that within minutes, right? With Novel, and you would not need to be like a developer, or have really any technical knowledge, or really any blockchain knowledge, right? And so I would say that kind of like executing on every single corner of that has been like, that's what we pulled off, and I'd say it's pretty hard. And I could go through. I mean, it's like to be able to handle cash to crypto seamlessly, like in a Shopify checkout, that's pretty tricky. Making it so that we offer an option for people, customers that don't have a crypto wallet already, with this partner Taurus. And it was important to us to have it be okay, like they can create a crypto wallet with a Google account using this partner Taurus, but like and there's other solutions for making it very easy to create a wallet. The interesting thing about Taurus is that it's also compatible with OpenSea, so it's like both, it's like an on-ramp, but it's also usable. And a lot of these other solutions that we saw were like not actually like you would get this person that barely knows what crypto is, an NFT, and then they would not be able to like see it anywhere else or use it in any other platform. So that's just kind of one example of something that we had to dive really deep into and figure out. Another thing that we did, we used Polygon. We used Polygon to like actually mint NFTs. And that was a decision that we made like before, Polygon had gotten this like Sequoia investment and was, kind of cool, if you will. And we did that because, it was like, all right, like Ethereum compatibility, like we figured that is going to be the win long term, like, to be compatible with, like it's EVM compatible. But we can't deal with a world where like gas fees are like $1,000, right? And merchants, need to put like $1 million reserve to like cover that or something. Like, and that was kind of what we saw out there. So we were like, all right, Polygon makes sense. Like it kind of like is the perfect bridge of interoperability, but also usable. So, I mean, hopefully that's a simple little sample size there, but there's kind of just like all the devil is in the details, like with getting these things to be like 100% right, so that it's not just like a cool idea. It's like actually something you can execute on like today. Oh, Mikey, you're muted.
Well, you had me at no code solution, so that's great. We love the Polygon. Shout out to Ryan and his team for doing amazing things. I mean, I got my Polygon shirt on. I'm flashing it to everybody. It's definitely a big fan of it. Speaking of interoperability and Ethereum compatibility, we have our POAP ready. There was a bit of a drop issue that I corrected, my own issue that I corrected. So the code phrase, the secret word, all one word that you can mint right now is applicably CPG Black Friday. All one word, all lowercase, CPG Black Friday. That is your POAP redemption to get the beautiful Roger Beaman's POAP for our Genius Call. It'll be open for another 24 minutes, so please do your best to grab that.
I don't have time to like go get it myself. Like,
we'll get you something.
Okay.
You can redeem it from POAP. Make sure you get something.
Do I have to leave my Genius Call to get my Genius Call POAP? Yeah.
It should be from the app. But we've got a couple more things teed up from questions for anybody that's watching now, we get those brought into the chat. Let's talk a little bit apart from CPG, because we don't want to, there's no alpha here, no spoilers for what we're doing Friday, but what are some of the other fun brands that you're working with? You mentioned that Liquid Death is one of your amazing clients. What are some of the fun ways that they're leveraging this experience for their community that others are probably going to adapt as well?
Totally, yeah. Liquid Death, that's actually, that's funny you mentioned them. So they do these like Murder Mondays, like that's like their thing for like their community. And so they, you know, like, I mean, they're just kind of a hilarious brand, like as is probably apparent, right? Like they've got, you know, Martha Stewart doing like chopped off hand candles, and like they really, you know, they've let their imaginations run wild, and it's worked incredibly well for them. You know, they've raised like, I think, over $150 million, and you know, they're selling water, and they're very good at it. So yeah, the thing that Liquid Death is like, this actually just this past Monday, they actually just launched this like whole entire experience for their like token holders. And yeah, I mean, it includes like merch and like a whole bunch of like discounts and stuff on that. It also includes like these ridiculous well, you know, I don't, maybe they're serious about them, but things that you could get, like you could get one hair of the founder's beard, and it was like framed, and it was like, you know, use cases include flossing, or, you know, cloning him to like create a competitor brand, and so so I think they've just like really like let their imaginations run with like, you know, like this like engaged group of super fans and what they can offer them. But they obviously also have like this, you know, Discord and all that stuff, like the kind of traditional things similar to what CBG has, and the engaged community there. So I think it's like, you know, and I'm obviously not running their business, but like they have this engaged group that they can, you know, like have this special relationship with. And I think that relationship kind of goes both ways, where, you know, that community gets these special perks, but also like gives a lot of valuable feedback to the brand. And yeah, another one that I think is really worth mention on that note is this company Taika, that like they did something that I actually think is like, that is actually another use case that I think we're really excited about. So they did this, we've kind of referred to it as a Web3 Kickstarter. What they did was they did an NFT drop, which funded the creation of like their next flavor for their next drink. And I should give some context on them. They're a coffee company that's co-founded by one of the top 10 baristas in the world. There's competitions. He was number 9, I believe, in the world. So anyways, so that's them, really great coffee company. And they did this NFT drop to fund the next flavor that they were making. And so, you know, raised around like $1 million off of that to fund the product development. And then the community members that had purchased that NFT, they got to vote on what that flavor would actually be. So it was kind of this feedback loop, like into you know, creating the product. And you know, and that's, I think, a valuable thing to do, because it's like, all right, like, you know, you get to like direct what one of the top 10 baristas in the world, like who can probably make coffee a lot better than you, like you get to direct which like flavor he's going to make. Like that's pretty cool. So they did that, and then the token holders got early access to the product, you know, like when it was first getting shipped, like as they were scaling, you know, the manufacturing up. And then now, like forever in perpetuity, they get a discount on it, right? So it was like, you know, funded the product, then got to vote on what it was, then got early access, then now they get a discount on it forever. And on the merchant side, it's like, all right, they're not having to pay for a Facebook ad for that person to come back. So it's like, actually that discount probably works out, because Facebook ads are really expensive now. So So it's kind of like a win all around. And so, yeah, I think that this kind of like Web3 Kickstarter is something that we're going to see a lot more of.
I'm a big coffee fan, and I would love to dig into that a bit more. It
Yeah.
sounds really interesting, this Kickstarter. I mean, I think kickstarting has existed for a while.
Yeah.
I think the follow-on accountability of it, and as you said, the ask not to track drastically changed our industry, of which customer acquisition costs. I mean, Nick Sharma was on talking about that specifically.
Yeah.
It's really been a fun time to watch the creative solutions emerge around that, and Web3 provides an interesting angle on it.
Yeah.
One thing that caught my attention was this in perpetuity permanence of an NFT transaction. We've spent a bunch of time talking about subscriptions, and how subscription NFTs or programs specifically are evolving. Do you have any insights or any projects that you're impressed with or taking note of that are using that type of system, and what is attractive to you about them?
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of funny that you say that. I mean, obviously, the first company that I started was a subscription billing company.
I do
Yeah.
my research, and actually, a shout out to Janet, who helps me a lot with the research. But yeah, I do my research.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm now an advisor to the CEO of Recharge, which is like the largest subscription billing like company in the in the Shopify ecosystem. Actually, they're beyond it too, like BigCommerce and stuff. But yeah, so if there are two things that I know and have thought a lot about, it's probably Web3 and subscription billing. So the interesting thing is that, and there's kind of some irony in it for me, is that like subscriptions sort of like, if you think about it, subscriptions are sort of like it's like an auto pay system, right? Like that, basically like automatically deducts money from your bank account on a recurring basis, right? And what really is required there is, like in sort of Web 2 world, you need a payment token, which is like authorized to do that, right? That is authorized to basically like bill, like without you kind of clicking on approve button, right? And so that basically does not natively exist in like literally like natively in like the EVM or in the Bitcoin blockchain either. Like yeah, like you need to, as the user and the owner of the wallet, you need to sign every transaction. You can't sign a transaction that says like, I allow like in perpetuity until I cancel it, the transferring of Ethereum on this given interval, right? And so so you can't do that with the native coin of like with Matic and Polygon or with Ethereum. You can do it with ERC20s. So like that is, so there's one project that I saw that I thought was pretty interesting called Superfluid, that looks like they're doing that. I think that the interesting thing there, like probably the single biggest problem, or at least one of the biggest problems in crypto, is like the sort of like cash to crypto, basically the transfer between currencies and making that seamless. And so I guess the concern that I would have is that if this only works with ERC20s, then like that's kind of deeper in the rabbit hole than a lot of people have gone today. But that could change. And I obviously hope it does. I think benefits all of us that are building in the Web3 space if it does. But yeah, I guess obviously we could focus on that and perhaps building something like that into Novel. And I haven't, because I think that it's like just because of that requirement of it being an ERC20, like the friction there makes it tricky to pull off. And but I would love to be wrong. Like, and there's new projects coming out all the time, and maybe someone's gonna DM me right after this and be like, "There's this one that you haven't heard of," and like they make it all super easy in one click. And so, but as of this literal moment, that is my my understanding of it.
Again, I think Apple has this approach of being resilient and kind of slow to the table that will force people to be thoughtful. Specifically, their changes to subscriptions has been a really enlightening change of policy. I don't think that people are thrilled about it because I think a lot of the value in content gating is specifically nullified with what Apple just did. But also, I think makes for a really interesting approach of you really have to get the normies to understand what's happening and not just promise them with a hand wave that like this will be fine. You've got to like commit to it. And I think it's the same, like you've said, the details of an ERC20 contract and then the complexity of moving money around as a result of it, which could be ripe for scamming. Like how much infrastructure is set up right now within banks for fraud detection? Like billions of dollars. And it's it's not perfect, but it's working. And some people see it as a hassle, but along the lines of a subscription, if you just went full on into Web3 subscription, I feel like there's a likelihood that something is going to be unintended of that consequence at this juncture. And you can be on that pioneering edge and you can take that risk. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that do. I think there's got to be some balance in at least the way that I'm thinking about subscriptions, specifically from the app side of things, because it is so easy to just look at your phone and pay for stuff. And that's how it should be for buying an NFT. And it should be as safe as that. But we've got a gap there. So, and it's rapidly closing.
Yeah. Well, and I think on that note, I mean, one thing that like we haven't even talked about thus far, right? Like, is the obviously like insanely tumultuous time that we're in generally, but also obviously in Web3 and crypto. I mean, it feels like a different world back when we were there in NFT NYC, at that event, right? Like times have changed. And and I think so I think that like really kind of like forces like anyone that's a founder like you and me here, it's like you kind of have to like keep a level head and keep your own like conviction strong, right? And just like there's just so much noise that it's like you have to like have kind of your own like clear understanding of what's true, and you kind of can't let that get like swayed all over the place. And so I mean, what you made me think of is the like with talking about like Apple and like their like various integrations and like bringing those natively. Which made me think of is the incorporation of Web3 into Instagram, and obviously we've already seen it be incorporated into Reddit, and like so that's obviously a great thing, I would say, for Web3 generally and as a concept, right? Like it's going to like onboard just a ton of people. Around 25% of the world is on Instagram, as you used to work Meta. And so that stands to be like that'll just like dramatically, I think, increase adoption. And for the creator economy, I think it's that's kind of a fascinating thing, especially like doing an NFT drop. If you think about it, like all these like creators are they're sort of like bootstrapped startups. Like they never kind of get to do this like venture round, if you will, to sort of like fund them quitting their day job. And so I can see that, taking off as a thing. And then, kind of rewarding their early fans forever. So that I think is like a really great piece of news for Web3 and you know, and anything around it. Obviously, a week later, like FTX exploded, and like, you know, like that whole thing, and you know, that was not great. On the, you know, in the opposite direction. But yeah, I think one thing that, like, I think most people would agree on, even most of the skeptics, I think, would agree on, is that crypto adoption will probably go up long term. Like betting against crypto, I think you would have to be actually crazy to do that. Like, you know, like the price that, like, and I'm not saying that, you know, price equals like that. That's maybe not the best way to measure it. Maybe adoption is a better thing, but that's obviously gone up like a lot over time too. But you know, from just Silk Road users. But yeah, I think that you know, like if you just look at the price, like it has, like the Ethereum price is like around where it was at the peak of the last boom, right, in 2018, right? And so, you know, it's gone down back to the last peak, right? So so I think that, yeah, you know, long term, like it would be hard to imagine that crypto is not here to stay, right? Like
100%.
Yeah.
The tech works.
Yeah.
I think it's been used for some nefarious and unintended results.
Yeah.
With the, you know, I think scamming, and I'm sort of the opinion that it's really cool that anybody can create their own currency, and also maybe not everybody should be able to create their own currency. And that's generally, like, there's a lot of things in life like that. Like, you know, I think it's cool that everybody can drive a car. I also think that maybe not everybody should be driving cars. For me, I want to touch on a piece of the experience that I think is uniquely captured with and differentiated by the idea of an NFT. I am a couple of things. All of it is, I think, passion. I'm a passionate moviegoer. I am a passionate collector. I collect GI Joes and comic books.
Yeah.
And I'm also a giant hockey fan. My son and I go to lots of hockey games. And I bring this example up of a couple of weeks ago. I went to the Sharks game, attended it, got the tickets gifted to me, and showed up. But at the conclusion of the game, when the score was finalized, I received an NFT from the San Jose Sharks.
That's awesome.
As a commemorative experience.
Yeah.
That ticket is not worth anything to anyone except me.
Yeah.
Because I have this great experience of watching the Sharks lose to the Anaheim Ducks in overtime in a shootout. And that memory is now tied to, in my mind, because I'm an NFT nerd, that NFT.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about in e-commerce? Because there are so many people, like you mentioned, Supreme. We have Bobby Hundreds. There are so many folks that lining up to wait and buy stuff. I know Chad, our producer, is very much in this camp of like totally waiting to buy something that is in one of his collectible areas. And it's not the collectible that needs to be the NFT, but encapsulating that experience. And maybe there's some alpha here for CPG on Friday, maybe not. What are you seeing in terms of the experience going forward of how NFTs at kind of each stage being an integral part of like the proof you were there?
Yeah, totally. Well, I think that there's like so fundamentally, like at like a, I guess, a very base level, and sort of like a, I guess, like technical level in a way, like I guess economics technical, like there's two things. Like a NFT is a public indication of private ownership, similar to, like, probably the most similar thing in like the like outside of tech, just in the physical world, is like fashion. Like you can see what clothes I'm wearing. The interesting thing about it being in the digital world is obviously then it can kind of like be used in scalable ways. And so Yeah, so like the interesting things that are like enabled, so or like the sort of building blocks that like NFTs give you. There's this secondary market, and then there's interoperability, and so so there's like you can buy and sell an NFT because there's a standard of ownership, right? And then built into that secondary market, there's like the royalty fees for like the creator, and that's its own interesting thing, right? But yeah, so I guess that's kind of like how I think about it at a base layer. And the interoperability, I think, piece in what you're saying there, I think is really, really interesting. And yeah, because like you can basically getting a bunch of different pieces of technology to talk to each other is actually really hard. Like it's really tricky. Like at many software companies, there's like an integrations team, right? And and so it's really interesting to have these NFTs that are, like sort of stand apart from that everyone can like read and refer to as a source of truth. And so I guess what comes to mind to me that's like really cool about you getting that NFT for that game, for the Sharks game, is like, okay, like you can then get, like for attending that game, like they could give you something special on their website, right? That would be like, a discount on like, a game jersey or something like that. And, you know, and like in theory, that would be something that they could orchestrate with like Ticketmaster plus this, right? It's just that doesn't happen because it's so much effort. But when it's made easy with NFTs, because there's this kind of interoperability out of the box, then you can kind of just do it. And so what I think is really neat is that you can like it's sort of, if you want to think about it this way, it's sort of like a marketer's like Swiss Army knife, right? Like you can, I could give you that NFT for going to that game, and then that could unlock, maybe early access to buying tickets for the next game. It could also unlock, maybe only people that have ever gone to a game get like an exclusive set of merch, right? Like there's just kind of all these different things that you can do to sort of treat your customer in a special way. Like if they have done like a certain thing, and that could be an IRL event, like that could be, listening to a podcast, like that could be kind of like any number of things, right? And so I sort of think of it as like this, like NFTs in a way, as like this sort of universal, like if this then that engine. And as these like platforms that we kind of have our eyeballs on all day, like incorporate these more and more, like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, right? Like that will just become more and more true, right? Like there will be more and more things that you can do in terms of, offering special experiences, like for people that have fulfilled like a certain criteria. So that's maybe not the most sexy way to say it, but I guess that is like, what I think is really exciting about, the potential of the technology. And I think that'll, Ticketmaster is now making there be like they've partnered with Flow, and there's basically you get a NFT ticket stub for like every single ticket that you buy with Ticketmaster, right? And I think that people are going to start to see, and like they'll have this kind of like light bulb moment when you going to that Taylor Swift concert gets you something special after the concert, right? So anyways, that's a little bit of a rant/ramble, but hopefully made some sense.
I think it's a great way for us to start to wrap this conversation. We've covered a lot of ground here. I want to thank you for being so open and vulnerable about your journey to get to this point. I think your technical and your founder knowledge like shines through on this, and I really thank you for being with us today. We've got a couple more minutes. Well, we're sort of over time, but I want to leave the last word with you. I would ask that you hang on here because we've got to do a couple of tidy up things.
Sure.
And I didn't see anything come through the chat, but I don't think we have any questions. But if you could pop into the pop chat, pun intended, answer any sort of questions that come up. this has been a fun adventure. I'm excited for people to see your product in action this Friday. Yep. I'm excited for us to continue these fun conversations about how Web3 is transforming a lot of things. Mm-hmm. And so I'll leave it with you of the last couple of words before I hop back on and say goodbye. The floor is yours.
Oh man, a closing statement. I guess, I mean, well, because I think that, like a lot of people that are, listening are going to be like founders in, Web3 / like ecom. And obviously it's kind of a crazy time for both. I think, the advice that I got from a friend a long time ago, which is actually, I had a job interview that I was really nervous about. And, but, it's kind of been this thing that I've just like, it's stuck with me. And I just think it's like so succinct and just really applicable is to be more excited than you are scared. Because I think that there's like, it's inevitable that there's going to be like some degree of fear and kind of like, when you see like, like things drop like double-digit percentage points in days, you can't help but be shaken a bit. But I think that, if like, so don't kind of like try to suppress that. Like it'll obviously be there, but like feed the excitement and kind of the thing that, like that got you to kind of do this in the first place, right? And focus on that and have that be kind of the base that powers you, rather than letting that fear take over. So that's what I got.
Thank you, Roger. All right, folks, we're concluded. We've got so much exciting things planned for the next couple of weeks. Please stay tuned. Please make sure you like and subscribe the Crypto Podcast Goods wherever you listen to your podcasts. This will drop pretty soon. I'm not sure it'll be Friday. We'll hopefully get it Friday. We'll restream this as well. I hope everyone has a wonderful, thankful, reflective Thanksgiving. I know there's so much craziness going on in the world. I think it's important for us to take these moments to, in spite of everything that's crazy going on, to appreciate what we do have. Reach out and check on your friends because it has been a tough couple of weeks in crypto. And I applaud everyone who continues to show up every day and throw those GMs. Let's have an amazing Thanksgiving. Looking forward to seeing everybody Friday and next week at Art Basel. FOMO won't be too high. We appreciate you all. Thanks especially to our builders and to Chad and Janet and the mods. We will see you again soon, and thank you.